Hi there. Today we're going to be looking at groups and cohesion, and we're going to specifically look at an extended question from 2011. We've got two objectives that we're going to try to achieve by the end of the session. We're going to try and reinforce and learn more content to do with key terms, theories, and knowledge on groups and cohesion. And we're also going to look at exam technique when trying to attempt to answer an extended question in order to try and get as close as we can to 14 out of 14 marks. So, what you have in front of you is the following learning map. Pupil response, a banded criteria, mark scheme, and it's also got the extended question at the top as well. What I'd like you to do, first of all, is I want you to read this question. I want you to read it twice. After you've read it for the second time, I want you to highlight any command words. Once you've highlighted a command word, I then want you to draw an arrow and then annotate just off it, explaining what you think those command words mean. So if you'd like to pause your video, highlight that and annotate them, and when you're ready, press play. Okay, so the two command words that I've managed to identify in this question are explain and then outline. And I then asked you to annotate what each one meant. So just off explain, I've written out to set out the main reasons or purposes, and for outline is to set out the main characteristics. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about what these two mean later on in the video. But for just the time being, I want us to try and do something a little bit different. You should be able to identify now that the question is actually set out into two parts. There's actually two questions within the extended question. What I'd like you to do now is draw a line or block out part of the text so then that distinctly sort of separates the two questions. So can you pause your video and just try and draw a line to separate the two questions within our one extended question. Okay, this is where I drew my line. So for me, there's two questions, and it's really important to do this on the extended questions within psychology extended questions. The first question is asking us to explain. And this is to do with more key terms and theories that help us to, in this question, explain the importance of cohesion to group productivity. The second question asks us to outline or set out the main characteristics, and this is much more general. This can almost be a list that you write out. So this could also ask you for list the possible strategies that can be used to reduce the negative impact. Like I said, this is really important to consider because the outline section of your question or your answer should really be a lot shorter than the main body or the meat of your answer, which is in this question, it is the explain section. Okay, the next thing that I want you to do is I want you to choose a different coloured highlighter pen, and I want you to highlight what the qualifying word is. Now, the qualifying word for me is what you're going to link your answers to. And because there's two questions that we've identified now within this extended question, there could be more than one set of qualifiers. So what you're going to link your answer to. Can you just pause your video and then when you're ready, highlight those qualifying words or what you're going to link it to. And when you're ready, press play and we'll just see if we've agreed on those qualifiers. Okay, so the qualifiers that I've gone for on this question, the first one on the explain section is I've gone for cohesion to group productivity. And for the second one, for the outline part, I've gone for reducing the negative impact of faulty processes. So these qualifying words, it does look like common sense that, yeah, we know what we're going to need to talk about, but you really need to pay attention as to what it's actually asking you to do. We'll come on to a little bit more detail about what it is or what is so important about those qualifying words. You should have the following sheet of paper in front of you, and we're just going to try and use this to, again, like I said, reinforce your knowledge of key terms and theories of groups and cohesion, and also to develop your confidence, your knowledge on how to answer an extended question in the psychology paper. So hopefully you will have scanned the QR code at the top left hand corner of your page, which has got you to the video which you can hear my voice on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the examiner's commentary to see what the general trend from the exam from the summer of 2011 is with pupils' responses, and then we're going to see a typical pupil response and see if this matches this trend. and what the criteria for the mark schemes says that they need to achieve. Okay, so the first part of the examiner's commentary looks at this section. Okay, on the mark scheme, that marries up with this part of the mark scheme. Okay, and it refers to points A, B. It also refers to point H and I, which is task and social cohesion, and it's also referring to how the answers managed to develop the discussion into what was the most important aspect of cohesion and why. Okay, so that is then the points J, K, and L. Have a little read of the two parts that are highlighted on the examiner's commentary and of the mark scheme, and then when you're ready, press play again, please, on the video. So once you've read through the examiner's commentary and mark scheme, what we're going to do now is we're going to try and look to see if the pupil response has managed to achieve any of those points from the mark scheme. So what I'd like you to do again is I want you to use a highlighter pen on the pupil response, and when you've paused the video, I want you to highlight what parts of the mark schemes from points A, H, I, J, K, and L has the pupil actually managed to achieve. Okay, it's really important. Look at the question and think about what the question is asking the pupil to respond to. Just think, have they managed to achieve any of points A, H, I, J, K, and L? Pause the video and do that now, and when you're ready, press play, and we'll look to see if we've got the same answer. Okay, so I think that this pupil response could be credited with the following. I think this section here gives us a really good definition of cohesion. It's almost word for word. They must have really learnt their key terms for cohesion on that one. Okay, I also think that they got the point H. Okay, all right, on task cohesion. I also think they got the point I, J, and that was it. Okay, let's go back 1 minute. So just before we continue to look at the highlighted section in purple, I personally don't think that they got the marking criteria B. Okay, they didn't really say anything to do with that at all in their answer. They also really didn't, like the examiner's commentary, sorry, it said that the majority of pupils failed to develop the discussion into what was the most relevant and why. I did say that they got points J. Okay, they said that task cohesion was more important than social cohesion, but they didn't actually then carry that on any further to sort of back up their argument as to why social cohesion might be particularly important. So the purple section that I've just highlighted now has said that the examiner's commentary in pupils' responses showed an awareness of Steiner's models of group productivity, but answers gave incorrect terms or didn't identify faulty processes, coordination, or motivation losses. So that was quite a common theme. What I'd like you to do is, again, in a second, I want you to pause your video and I want you to see if you can identify in this pupil's response if they've managed to achieve the grading criteria or the mark scheme criteria for point C, D, and I also want you to have a little look and see if there's anything in there about social loafing or the Ringelmann effect, so points F and G as well. Okay, pause your video. If you think that they've achieved it, highlight it, write the letter next to it at the end of the highlighted section, and then when you finish, press play and we'll see if we agree on those answers. Okay, so for me, I don't think this pupil's response was good enough or detailed enough to credit any of that actual content. Okay, within their answer, there is a part of it which does talk about Steiner's model, but it's very, very vague. It doesn't go on to actually saying what the definition is, which is on the mark scheme of actual productivity equals productivity potential minus losses due to faulty processes. There's nothing on that. It doesn't go into anything about coordination losses. That does mention social loafing, but again, there's nothing in there really in terms of a definition. And the Ringelmann effect is mentioned, but far too vague really to be crediting anything in that answer. So really, unfortunately for this person, this bit of a section here, I'm just going to draw on there, was mainly their section where they attempted to sort of put in their key theories that was in there. I'll just highlight that in red because I don't think that looks very clear. So that red section here and here, this paragraph there is a bit too vague really, and they've missed out on quite a lot of points which they could have achieved. Okay, so I just want you to think about when you drew that line on that question at the start of the video. You tried to split it up into two sections. Now, if you look at this pupil's response, where I've just drawn this last annotated sort of arrow, where they're finishing off their attempt at key theories, for me, they've written 3/4 of a page on all of that, and they've only written one paragraph. Okay, and I think this sort of summarises or highlights how important it is to sort of spend a certain amount of time on the question. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, okay, is I want us to look at now the strategies to improve cohesion. I'm just looking at that mark scheme. It said that generally this was answered quite well, although some responses were not credit-worthy. For example, a significant number of answers merely included last year's mark scheme, which was linked to stress management techniques. Okay, so quite often students are clever. They look at mark schemes and they think, right, if I learn that, that's going to help me answer a question if the question comes up on that topic again. This is where that qualifying word is really, really, really important, because the question actually asks you to outline strategies that can be used to reduce the negative impact of faulty processes. Okay, a lot of stress management techniques would not reduce the impact of faulty processes, it would just reduce anxiety. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, on the mark scheme now, we've got strategies from points M all the way down to X. I want you to look at that paragraph at the bottom of the pupil's response, and I want you to see if you think they've achieved any of that grading criteria. So highlight it if you think they've got it, and then make sure that you then write the letter for the grading criteria as well at the end. Okay, so pause your video, play it once you think you've finished that. Okay, so the points that I decided to award this student's response for were points M, V, O, and Q. Okay, so only there they've written, I think it's 5 or 6 lines, one paragraph, and they've managed to get as many points as they managed to get in 3/4 of a page where they were trying to get down their key terminology. They structured the question quite well. They did go for more evidence, more examples, but they missed out quite a lot of detail really in that explain section. Okay. So one point going back to that explaining, quite often it's quite a good idea really to think about when you're explaining something that if you have a theory, you've got to name that theory. You've then got to try and explain it or define the theory, give a definition so that the person marking the paper knows what you're talking about. Then you've got to try and relate it to that qualifying word. So once you've defined, for example, the Steiner's model, you've got to sort of relate that to the importance of cohesion to group productivity in this particular question. Okay, so that's a lovely way to think about it. So it's name a theory, define the theory, and then try and link it to that qualifying word. Okay, if you can do that to all the theories for each part, you've got a really good chance of picking up 8, 9, 10 points on that first section of the question. Okay, and again, the second section, just a list, it's recalling information, it's not asking for a lot of detail. Easy points to gain there. So what I'd like you to do finally now with this pupil response is I want you to total up the number of points that they've made. Okay, so count the letters, the number of letters that you've awarded from the mark scheme. Then I want you to go over to a banding criteria, and I want you to look at what you think they would achieve. I also want you to think about the quality of written communication, QWC. Okay, so pause your video, do that, and then I'll just talk a little bit about what I think they were awarded in this question. Okay, so for me, this student managed to get 8 points in total. Right, that would have given them in the grading criteria, it would have got them in this section here, level 2 response, 8 to 9 points. And that would get them 5 marks. Okay. I also think this question is quite well written, really, though. It's not got any spelling mistakes. Punctuation and grammar is very good. So that would, for me, that would get quality of written communication marks. Okay, so they get +1 for that, which would mean that they get 6 marks in total out of 14. Now, at the bottom right hand corner of your learning, you've got this symbol. It stands for please turn off. What I'd like to do is turn over your page, please, and then I want you to follow the instructions on that learning map on the next page. There are 2 QR codes that you can use to help you complete those instructions. Okay, use those as you see fit, but this is a very much an independent task. Now, don't forget, this task is all about, number one, reinforcing your knowledge of the content and key terms and theories of groups and cohesion. And then the second objective is also to develop your confidence in answering an extended question. So hopefully this next task is going to be really, really beneficial to achieving those objectives.